barren and sun-bleached. Emptiness as far as the eye can reach.
Hey guys, Pak here with my Impending Doom while Flame Blast Ignite Elementalist. This is my favorite mapping build of all time because it combines fast cast speed, great coverage, lots of curses and ignite proliferation with the strong single target of our Flame Blast Ignite. It all revolves around Defiled Forces. This beautiful notable allows us to refresh the large Val Flame Blast Ignite on a target by simply cursing it over and over. Since our clear ability, Impending Doom, is being triggered by casting a curse, we simply use it to refresh our Ignite and even make use of the second part of Defiled Forces, which is remove elemental ailments when you cast a curse spell. The centerpiece of the build are the unique Love's Vixen's Entrapment. By casting a useless curse linked to Impending Doom, we trigger all the curses socketed in the Vixens, which then immediately override and remove the filler curse, resulting in a Doom Blast. Since we don't care about any Doom Blast overlaps, this version is unaffected by last leak's Vixen Spell Cascade bug fix that completely destroyed my Poison Impending Doom build. This build is a great Leaguestarter which excels at mapping fast, progressing into red maps with little to no gear, great at farming essences, expedition, betrayal and other stationary elite mechanics. While you are able to get your Watchstones and kill pinnacle bosses, this is not however an uber bossing character. Neither if your goal is to farm Sanctum on day 1. I'll use it to fill out the Atlas and make a whole bunch of currency and either min-max it, reroll or transition it to a bossing character like Maw of Mischief. If you plan on League starting it in SSF, be aware that the Vixens is a requirement, and while them being a tier 3 unique, you might not find it on your way to the high level 90s. I suggest an SSF friendly start though in the PoB if you still want to check it out. Let's jump into the PoB real quick. As you can see down here I have 3 trees prepared. One is the SSF friendly variant without the Vixens, and the other 2 are the Impending Doom trees. One is a mid-game tree that is more focused around solving attribute and resistance problems that might occur until you have figured it out with gear, and the other one is to smooth over gameplay and cap spell suppression. This is a pretty standard Elementalist Ignite tree where we pick up a lot of elemental damage, fire percentage damage, fire multiplier, some cast speed, some armor, ailment effect, spell suppression. Where it differs a little bit to, like, let's say your standard DD Ignite tree might be the curse pathing over here. We pick up some AoE because this also increases the AoE of our Impending Doom. We pick up the Defiled Forces where we can make good use of the curse mastery over here. It has a couple ones that are kind of interesting, but in this case I just take the 40% reduced extra damage from critical strikes because with the Vixens and with our curse we're going to permanently curse all the enemies, giving us a nice little defensive boost. Another thing to note about this tree is that we use the Mastery skill cost life instead of 30% mana cost. This one is required early on because whenever we use our curse linked to Impending Doom, all the curses socketed in our Vixens will be triggered. That will amount to a shit ton of mana cost. Now using this mastery and having around 1000 energy shield will balance it out and will make you not go when using your curse repeatedly. Now when we move over to the other tree, that is the late Impending Doom one, we can get away with a lot less energy shield and we don't need that mastery anymore, and this is simply due to picking up this tiny little node that gives us 50% energy shield per enemy killed. That will give us enough sustain for mapping that we never have to worry about our ES again. And on bossing we don't really need to spam our curse anyway because we have our Val Flame Blast and we just then repeat every 3 seconds our curse to refresh that ignite. Unfortunately, I can't really afford to path down to Inverterate, so on this tree I have to pick up Instinct, which only adds up to 22 suppression, so we add Resourcefulness for another 8 on top. I opt for a Spell Suppression Anoint on the Amulet, which is right now Inverterate, but is the expensive one. Early on you can just pick up Quick Step, which is really nice, super cheap, and adds a 6% movement speed on top. We don't have to worry though on Elementalist. We can map for the longest time without kept spell suppression. We have the Bastion of Elements, which is an excellent early, one of the strongest elemental damage mitigations. We take the Mastery here, which is chance to suppress spell damage is lucky. And on top of that, since we play Impending Doom, every single monster is going to be cursed by Enfeeble, which adds up to a really nice early elemental as well as physical mitigation. If you're looking for a little bit more mapping defense, you can always respec the Heart of Flame into the Glacial Cage with the mastery that chills from your hits always reduce action speed at least by 10%. Especially if we're using Rebuke at the Val, we already have some flat added cold damage to spells, which will make this so every monster will be chilled whenever you use your Impending Doom or any ability for that matter. Let's move to skills and I go over everything real quick. In the weapon we have a cast when damage taken Molten Shell setup with Flame Dash. In the shield is our shield charge, faster attacks and grace. And in the helmet is the Impending Doom setup, which is linked to Ignite Proliferation. Vulnerability, which is our filler curse. You want to have it linked to the curse that doesn't really matter and you don't want to have on the enemy. The other supports are either Spellblade or Combustion. This depends on the weapon we are using. I'm gonna go over that in the item section. The body armor is our 6th link. It's the Val Flame Blast, our main single target ability. It is linked to Cruelty, which we will keep on at all times unless we're doing some pinnacle bosses and the Cruelty effect doesn't go up to 30, then we might replace it with Deadly Ailments. Next link is Swift Affliction, which is a really strong support that reduces the ignite duration, but it doesn't really matter because we have enough and we can still comfortably keep up the default forces ignite by recursing. Burning damage is a really good support. Then it is Ignite Proliferation and Spellblade or Combustion. This again depends on the weapon. The Ignite Proliferation I really like in the Val Flame Blast. It's good for stationary content like Expedition or Ritual or Harvest, for example. You just have that fat ignite and that will proliferate and kill all the monsters around it. In our gloves, this is the Vixen setup. We put in all of our curses. I currently have Flammability, Enfeeble, Elemental Weakness, linked to Spell Cascade. The Spell Cascade is necessary to override the vulnerability and proc our Impending Doom. The Vixens gives us +1 curse, so we can actually have 3 curses on the enemy. I use Flammability, Enfeeble and Elemental Weakness because it's the perfect blend between defense and offensive curses. Enfeeble, as I said before, is one of the strongest mapping defenses in the game as long as it has good uptime. Now, if you are a softcore juicer and you just don't give a fuck, you can swap out the Enfeeble for punishment for additional damage. If you want additional defense, you can swap out the Elemental Weakness for Temporal Chains, which gives a huge action speed slow, which is not only amazing for bossing, but also great for mapping. So really customize it to your own needs. In the boots, we have auras. There's the Defiance banner. We have a Divine Blessing linked to Malevolence and a Flame Surge for the Burning Ground and giving us additional damage for the Ignite. Now the Divine Blessing Malevolence is also a little bit depending on your weapon, but more so in the item section. I have to use an Unset Ring in this setup, and in the Unset Ring I'm going to use the Determination. Ideally we get an Unset Ring with plus levels that gives us plus levels to the Determination and a lot of armor. Moving over to items. First we're going to start with the weapon. You can use your standard Ignite Scepter, that works really well. It's just a bunch of fire damage to spells, a lot of damage over time multiplier, fire damage over time multiplier, fire percentage damage. There's a lot of good stuff here. You can even go for +1 fire spell skill gems for your Val Flame Blast. Or in Trade League or in SSF, if you drop it, a really good option is the Rebuke of the Val. If this one is well rolled, it is really hard to beat. Only with a high-end scepter you can outdo the damage. And this is where we go back to the links earlier. If you are using the Rebuke of the Val, it only really works with the Spellblade support. You have to link the Spellblade to both your Impending Doom as well as to your Val Flame Blast, and it will add a whole bunch of damage to your build. This is again also linking back to the skill section where I was talking about Divine Blessing Malevolence or Divine Blessing Anger. If you're using the Karui Scepter and don't have that much flat damage to spells, an Anger early on can help you a lot, especially to get the Shaper of Flames damage up. And if you're using the Rebuke of the Val, definitely go for the Malevolence and only swap in the Anger when you're replacing the Grace for bosses, potentially. The next slot is the Shield. Here is also, for me, usually 2 options for mapping. I really like Crusader Buckler. It gives you like 9 movement speed, a lot of evasion, and makes just shield charging and moving around faster if the main focus you have is mapping. Now this only works though if you already have enough energy shield, and it's gonna make capping spell suppression a lot harder because you can only get up to 22%. An easier choice is the supreme spiked shield. It not only gives you a lot of energy shield potentially, it also has a 5 suppression implicit, making capping your suppression a lot easier, and is definitely what I probably would opt for in the beginning when I have the tree that doesn't have the energy shield on kill yet. The helmet is a bit of a special one. We're using the ritual base Archdemon crown and socket our Impending Doom into it. It will give us fire exposure on hit, which we sorely lack because we have the Vixen's entrapment as our gloves and cannot use Eldritch implicits. Before you get the ritual base, you can just use a random Diacide mask, just a lot of evasion, some ES. Gonna make it nice for your EB mana cost. The crafting process of the helmet is quite straightforward. We use an Essence of Horror to get 30% more elemental damage. That turns our Impending Doom into a 5 link. And if we can, we either craft +1 to AoE skill gems or do a T4 Ashling Slam to get the +2 Unveil on top of the Corel physical damage taken as fire craft. Because I'm pretty lazy and I don't want to click too many buttons, I usually don't use Flame Surge until I get the Archdemon crown, and I just manually cast Wave of Conviction instead to get the exposure. On the body armor, it's just your classic full dragon scale. I opt usually for as much armor and evasion as possible, some fizz reduction if you can, and a lot of spell suppression, and then take life from the mastery on the tree. A Corel craft to finish off the fizz mitigation, and the implicits are just standard, or effect, malevolence or determination, whatever you prefer. The gloves obviously are the Vixens. We need them, and that's about it. On the boots you just get your resistances, spell suppression, movement speed, life, and the implicits are the important ones. It's Scorched Ground when you move over a target, and ignites you inflict deal damage faster. Both of those give you a nice chunk of DPS. Amulet is just really damage over time multiplier and life. I like to add stats like armor and chaos resistance or whatever else you're missing. That's really nice, and you can finish it off with an increased effect of non-damaging element craft to have like a higher shock. There's also an option to go for +1 fire, etc. The sky's the limit, but this one is a really solid start. On the ring slot we have really multiple options. We start off the League with like just an amethyst ring for some chaos resistance and an unset ring to fit in all of our skill gems. Eventually, you can replace one of these rings with a Polaric Devastation if you feel like it. That's a lot of damage, and if there's no other source of Covered in Ash this league, then that's a really good ring. The Unset ring, I like to have some +1 levels if possible for our Determination, +1 to Socketed skill gems. And eventually, you want to use the Veiled craft, shock nearby enemies for 4 seconds when you focus. This is super nice because we can just go to any boss, press our focus, it will be shocked for a certain amount. We're also scaling ailment effect, so it will be quite a high shock. And you keep the shock as well as the ignite up, and every other ailment, standard ailment with the defiled forces. Now on the belt, it's just your standard leather belt. You can turn it into a hunter one for even more HP and fix whatever resistance and life you need. Lastly, the jewels. I really like energized armor in the Templar slot. It gives us a good chunk of armor combined with faith in steel. You can get it with corrupting crimson jewels. The Watcher's Eye is just whatever gets you more damage. Malevolence damage over time. Malevolence faster ignites is really good, and you can grab some defense determination stuff as well. And jewels is just standard life, and there's a lot of damage multiplier percentage that you can get. One last word to the Pantheons. I'm using Soul of the Brian King for stun reduction as well as freeze immunity, because all other ailments we're going to remove through defiled forces mostly. And in the Minor God, it's Soul of Ralakesh, just because I really don't like to die to bleeds while mapping. One more jewel to note is the Balance of Terror. If we are using Temporal Chains as our filler curse, we can use the Temporal Chains Balance of Terror, which gives us action speed cannot be slowed below base value, which is really comfy for mapping. This video originally supposed to be like 7 minutes long or something, slightly over that now. I'm just gonna finish it off with a couple of gameplay examples, how you do essences and your boss rotation, and just a couple tips and tricks. Your general mapping experience will just revolve around keeping up your malevolence, which for some reason I don't do in this clip, shield charging around and spamming your Impending Doom. Whenever you encounter like a super tanky rare or something, you will use your Valve Flame Blast, an essence or something similar, a leak mechanic. But 90% of the map, especially once you have a decent set of gear, will just be you spamming Impending Doom. Now, early on in your mapping process, when you complete the Atlas and your gear is low, there will be times where you don't have a Evolved Flame Blast and you will want to use your normal Flame Blast to get more DPS. You can just stand there and use your Impending Doom, it'll deal some damage, but the Flame Blast can speed up the process. It's up to you to decide if you use your normal Flame Blast or you'd rather wait around for your Impending Doom to kill the target or your Evolved Flame Blast recharging. The soul game prevention time of Evolved Flame Blast is super quick and you will have it up every couple of seconds. It's quite nice. As soon as we enter the lair of the Hydra, we use our Evolved Flame Blast on her. This is an excellent showcase of one of the weaknesses of the build, which is phasing bosses. Whenever the boss goes away and our Evolved Flame Blast hasn't fully recharged yet, we need to cast a normal Flame Blast on it and refresh it with our Impending Doom until our Evolved Flame Blast comes back up. For a quick demonstration of a normal Eater fight, I start off the fight with a Flame Blast, then rotate between Impending Doom and Flame Surge, which both refreshes the Flame Blast ignite duration as well as puts the burning ground underneath the target. I'm waiting until my Flame Blast is fully stacked, and as soon as I'm sure that the boss isn't moving right now, I'm gonna use it to get the big ignite on the target. Ideally, you combine it with the Convergence of the Elementalist, which adds another 30 more damage to your ignite, which I failed to do so in this clip. Also, I applied shock to the boss by pressing focus, which is the focus ring craft we discussed earlier, and the shock will be kept up through defiled forces as well. One thing to note about defiled forces and snapshotting ignite is that all buffs you have when applying the ignite, your Divine Blessing, Malevolence, your Convergence, will stay on for the whole duration of the ignite. However, the debuffs like Exposure or Curse Resistance Reduction or Burning Ground will have to be reapplied at all times because they will be recalculated for every ignite tick. Here I already used my big Evolved Flame Blast on the boss, and all I'm doing now basically is just use my Impending Doom to refresh the ignite and use the Flame Surge to put Burning Ground underneath the target until the boss eventually falls over. There you have it, this is my Ignite Impending Doom Elementalist. It is not the all-content killing machine, but it is my favorite mapper of all time and I love to Leaguestart it. I will have another video uploaded that goes in depth into the leveling, and you can check that one out on my channel here. If you have any questions, feel free to join me on Twitch or the Discord that I will link below in the description. Bye!